Extreme heat and wildfires in the West as our cruel summer continues. Haiti asked for American boots on the ground to secure that country, and a jewel heist in the south of France fit for a movie. Monday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for July 12th. As you can hear, I am Carlo Versano, and I'm here with, you know it, Baker Machado, filling in for J-Wag. Monday Miracle it is. How you doing, Baker? How's your weekend?
I'm great, Carlo. Great to see you as always. Did you survive the weekend? I feel like every place around me over the weekend was literally melting before my eyes this weekend.
It's just, subtropical New York City, not a great place to be. But yeah, we made it. A lot of good stuff to watch on TV, which we'll talk about.
Oh my God, yes. This was the perfect weekend.
At least we're not out west.
I was going to say, yeah, at least we're not out west, and we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, it's such a good weekend with everything on television this weekend to stay indoors in the air conditioning and don't even venture outside. But let's talk straight about that heat, because it was just bananas, Carlo. Death Valley hit 130 degrees Fahrenheit over the weekend. That is one of the hottest temperatures ever recorded on the surface of the earth. Don't want to be too dramatic there, but that is a very big deal. Now, the entire West is in the grip of another extreme heat wave, the third so far we've seen this summer. That is a result of another heat dome that is setting up over the region, this time further south, Carlo. And the sad news is it doesn't look like it's going to be letting up anytime soon.
Yeah, thankfully it is a little further south, so the Pacific Northwest is not the scene of what we saw a couple of weeks ago. That said, they do have a pretty serious fire. We got to watch the bootleg fire in Southwest Oregon. This thing tripled in size over the weekend. It looks like it was probably started from a lightning strike. Something like 150,000 acres burned. It's basically not contained. This fire has also knocked out 3 electrical lines that are critical to the entire western grid, which has led California to warn of rolling blackouts in the coming days. There's also a power emergency in Nevada because of this. So again, a single wildfire bringing the country's most populous state to the brink of blackouts. Just another effect of the climate emergency, Baker.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Carla, because again, just last week, scientists came out literally saying that what we've seen in terms of these high temperatures is a direct correlation to climate change. And the worry that a lot of scientists have is if we're seeing these epic, huge record temperatures in June and July, imagine when it's going to be in August, when August is traditionally seen as the hottest month of the entire year. That adds a lot of worry. And by the way, if it gets hotter every year, imagine when it's going to be next summer and the summer after that, and then 10 years from now. So obviously a lot of concern there. Let's move now to the pandemic, Carlos. Some new concerns here as new cases in the U.S. now up 60% over the last 2 weeks, driven by what else? The Delta variant, that across 42 states. So far, more than 99% of the new infections are among people who have not been vaccinated. Now, on Friday, the CDC did issue some new guidance for schools coming up for the fall. They're advising that vaccinated teachers and students do not have to wear masks. However, we should know California is already planning to go against that recommendation. They're announcing that all students will be required to wear masks at school, all to ensure that kids are treated the exact same here, Carlo.
And there's also states that are just not going to take this guidance for the other reason, saying that they've already basically banned mask wearing in those states. So the fall is going to be an absolute mess. Baker, Rightwing Media, meanwhile, continuing its crusade against the vaccines. I don't know if you've been following this over the weekend. Fox News basically has they've gone full anti-vax now. Tucker Carlson leading the charge over there. That's not that surprising. But I don't know if you saw this clip from CPAC over the weekend, the big conservative, I don't even know what it stands for, Conservative Political Action, something?
Yes, conference, yes.
Yeah, whatever. It's the big Republican get together. So it was in Dallas this weekend, and the crowd was literally cheering the fact that the White House was not going to reach its vaccine goal. I mean, I honestly saw that. I turned my computer off. I almost jumped off my roof. It was so upsetting. First of all, it's too stupid for words, but it's beyond that. It's actually more than that, Baker. It's straight up evil is what it is. It is evil. We have a major political party that is willfully leading its followers off the cliff, like in that Lemmings video game from when we were growing up. It is, I don't even know what to say. But no. Talk to me more about something AOC said, or, something that, the squad is doing in Congress. Get the Get out of here with that. I'm so sick of the both sidesism. This is insane, 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 insane. And I'm not going to stop talking about it because it is one of the biggest, the scariest things happening in this country right now.
Well, Carlo, the biggest concern is how we've really hit the vaccine wall now. We're now basically administering less than 1 million vaccine doses a day now, just because you've really hit that wall of everybody who wants a vaccine has already received a vaccine. And now you're starting to really run into the resistance crowd, those who are very abstaining from getting the vaccine at all costs.
Yeah.
This is why it's going to be very difficult for Joe Biden to even get close to that 70% threshold. We've been essentially stuck at 68% for quite some time now. But if you also look at the new cases out there, I mean, Missouri right now, southern Missouri and Arkansas right now are just massive heat places right now when it comes to new cases of the variants. Missouri itself is averaging 1,300 COVID cases a day, Carlo. Those numbers are up huge. Florida had 3,300 new cases on average the other day. It's just insane, the numbers here, and it's because most of those, as Dr. Fauci has said, are people who are not getting vaccinated. But I will add this. This is starting to get me a little bit more nervous. I now have heard stories now from 2 different outlets. One regarding all the gays, all my friends in Provincetown over the weekend who were fully vaccinated that are now catching COVID from the Delta variant. And then my husband's office was set to go back into having more people into the office. Somebody who was also fully vaccinated somehow caught the Delta variant and was able to get COVID as well. So there's concern, even if you're fully vaccinated, if you're going to get the Delta variant here.
The thing about this that's just so unbelievably mind-numbingly upsetting is that this could have been over. We could have been months ago. We could have been we could have put this in we could have been not talking about COVID for months. The vaccines came out. They were extremely effective. We ramped up production. President Trump deserves a lot of credit for what he did with getting the vaccines going. President Biden deserves a lot of credit for ramping up that vaccine distribution. And yet here we are, and we're going to keep talking about this for the rest of freaking time because of the half of this country that just doesn't want to get this.
And on a larger story, that then means for those who are vaccinated, Carlo, will you now see Pfizer, Moderna, all those other companies start making more booster shots because of all of those variants? Because then all of a sudden, the idea of us getting those booster shots didn't seem like it was going to be plausible because everybody would have been vaccinated. But now that we're not basically going to reach herd immunity, now does it put more of an onus on those booster shots? Obviously something to watch here. Carlo, I do want to switch gears and I want to talk about the latest in Haiti because the Pentagon is now saying law enforcement personnel from the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are going to go down to Haiti, this to assist in the investigation of the assassination of their president, Jovenel Moise. Now, the Haitian government has now asked for American troops on the ground to help stabilize that country, which is careening towards full-blown lawlessness right now. The White House is saying that they're analyzing that request, but they did say they have no plans to send any military personnel right now to Port-au-Prince right now.
Yeah, this, Jill always says no good answers in Afghanistan. This is another one of those no good options for President Biden. However, it is very notable that the Haitians asked for American boots on the ground. That tells you things are really spinning out of control there to ask that basically a former colonizer that stuck around for 30 years the last time they came in, asking them for help. Meanwhile, Haitian police, just in terms of the investigation, have arrested a prominent doctor with ties to Florida, accusing him of being one of the masterminds of this assassination plot. This guy's name is Christian Emmanuel Sanon. He is, I believe he's a dual Haitian-American citizen who lived in Miami. He reportedly flew to Haiti on a private jet last month with armed security and had some sort of plan to take over as president. Suspected members of the hit squad who have been detained have reportedly told investigators that the plan was to arrest Moise and not to kill him. So make of that what you will. This whole thing, though, is just getting stranger by the day.
Absolutely, Carlo. And meanwhile, let's stay in that region. Thousands of Cubans took to the streets of Havana and other cities over the weekend. This to protest the lack of food and COVID vaccines, and also a demand for the end of the ruling Communist Party in the area. The demonstrations were an unprecedented show of public anger in Cuba that, of course, where the regime does not tolerate dissent whatsoever, Carlo.
Yeah, there were also big protests in Miami and several other cities in America with big Cuban populations. Yeah, this, again, you don't see this every day. You don't see Cubans going out in the streets. So it's definitely a big deal. They use social media to organize these protests, since that's pretty much the only way they can do it. I believe the Cuban government actually cut internet service once that started happening. But that country facing food and medicine shortages, just made worse by an economic crisis brought on by what else? The collapse in tourism during the pandemic. Right, tourism is essentially the only thing that keeps the Cuban economy afloat at this point. So I mean, look, 90 miles south, we've got these poor Cubans who are on the street begging for COVID vaccines, while up here we have them wherever you want them. Walk down the street and you can get one, and we're cheering on
people rejecting them.
Yeah, we're cheering on people who are refusing to get them. Something is seriously wrong in this world.
I agree, Carlo. Let's go out of this world for a moment. Richard Branson successfully reached the outer limits of space. That on board his Virgin Galactic test flight over the weekend. He became the first of the so-called space barons to finally reach that milestone. Now, Branson and 3 Virgin employees flew 53 miles above sea level. This is where they experienced a few minutes of zero gravity before they glided back down to Earth. Now, the flight kicks off a new era of space tourism that will allow civilians to finally reach the edge of the atmosphere, but all for a hefty price here, Carlo.
Yes.
Now, the big question next up, Jeff Bezos. He's going to aim to go slightly higher with his Blue Origin when it lifts off a week from tomorrow. So no doubt the space race is definitely on here.
Did you get to watch any of this yesterday?
God. It was I was completely enthralled with it. And by the way, the YouTube stream kept going out for me. So
it's terrible.
I laughed to my husband. I said, "Wow, we have better capabilities of reaching outer space than we do making sure that the YouTube stream works properly here."
So one thing just to note, so Bezos, when he goes up, that thing is going to be more of like a, they're going higher, but they're also going vertically, right? So it's going to be more like a typical rocket launch. The Virgin Galactic thing that they created, it was clearly influenced more by like airplane travel, right? The thing looked like a big plane. That engineers say that that's not particularly compatible with the physics of space flight. So what that means is Virgin Galactic may end up being first, but they probably won't end up being the best at doing this. But I got to say, I know I've been a little cranky this morning, as you can tell. Just this vaccine stuff is really getting to me. Like I may need to take a day off just to
go back
get over
on paternity leave for this.
Seriously. But on this was really cool, and I watched it from start to finish. And I got to say, I consider me a convert, not because really I have any interest in the billionaire pissing match part of this, which is sort of
also
like
funny.
Yes. It gets all the headlines and it's funny, but it's also stupid. But the people who actually like worked behind the scenes to make this happen at Virgin Galactic,
right?
The test pilots, one of whom, by the way, died in 2014 in a test flight.
Good point.
Just the engineers, the mission control people, all of these folks. I mean, what an amazing thing that they pulled off. And there's this cynicism out there, and I say this knowing people are like, yeah, you're part of it. I appreciate that. It's especially there's a cynicism out there, and it is especially common, I think, among liberals or progressives, and I have fallen victim to it myself. But they try and like suck the wonder out of stuff like this, right? Like there's, if you looked on Twitter yesterday when this was happening, when Branson was going up there, everyone was tweeting like, oh yeah, well, pay taxes. Why don't you worry about the problems down on Earth before you go into space? Like, okay, yes, I agree. Like that's true. But I don't know if you can actually open up space flight to the masses, and this is a big if, but if you can actually scale it so that eventually it becomes a thing that it's not just something that rich people do to boast to one another, right? That it's actually real people can go. That's great. That's really cool. And we should be really proud that American companies are able to do that. And I mean, you just think about like the astronauts who have gone up in the space shuttle or on the ISS, they all come back and they talk about what a profound, life-changing experience it is to see the Earth from above, right? Just how fragile it looks, just sort of like hanging out there in space, and just how it really gives you this change of perspective in your own life. Look, the more people who can get that, the better, I say.
Yeah, look, so a couple of things from this. One, Blue Origin is essentially saying that what Virgin Galactic did this weekend was amazing and quite the feat, but it wasn't technically in space, because we should note that Blue Origin is going higher up there. Basically, Virgin Galactic just went on the surface of the planet but didn't technically get into space. But that's still an incredible feat, and this is 17 years in the making that Richard Branson and company essentially put this together. And we should note Elon Musk has already purchased a ticket to go on one of these Virgin Galactic space flights. So that is really going to be amazing. But basically, where does this go from here? That's going to be the big question. Bezos obviously going to go the week after. You'd have to think SpaceX has some plans for Elon Musk to go up here in the near future as well. And the goal here, Carlo, is if they continue to do more of these and more people pay for the expensive flights for this to happen, that brings down the cost essentially for you and me to be able to afford to go do this one day.
Right. I mean, imagine how cool it would be if they could pack one of these things with like a bunch of, high school kids, right, for free. Or like that would be awesome. Imagine, so I'm becoming a convert to this space tourism stuff.
And by the way, and I know what Branson did, basically when you're in, as you mentioned, it's almost like it's a plane. Each person, it only seats about 4 people inside one of these things. The windows, apparently, that you have on this sort of plane, the visuals you get of the Earth's atmosphere, I'm sure are some of the most stunning views you'll ever see in your entire life. So either way, a huge monumental moment in human history here. I do want to talk sports because it was an incredible weekend of sports this weekend, and I want to start with the Euro Cup because Italy came back from behind to beat England 3-2 on penalty kicks to claim the Euro title in front of a stunned crowd at Wembley Stadium in London. Now, Italy brings home their first Euro trophy since 1968. Well, oh, God, so heartbreaking for England, Carlo. They remain without a major trophy since 1966. Of course, they'll try again next year in the World Cup. It was wild to watch this game. I was on the edge of my seat during penalty kicks at the end, especially when England essentially started missing a lot of those shots at the end. Their goalie, by the way, England's goalie, insane. But
amazing.
I also was completely drawn, Carlo, to little Prince George, who was standing there with Kate Middleton and his father, Prince William, because you saw an array of different emotions from poor Prince George. You saw excitement, you saw jubilance, you saw tears, you saw like mortification, like everything that was going through anybody's mind, you saw in Prince George's face.
It was like a meme in the making, right? Yeah, sitting there in his little suit looking like Boss Baby.
The end is actually the most heartbreaking because when England lost it at the end, they cut straight to Prince George, who's being consoled by his poor parents. Like literally, like the worst news just happened in front of them.
Well, you got to teach them young that the world is a disappointing place, right? Seriously, though, I think I am going to get into soccer. I mean, I had no idea how exciting penalty kicks could be. I thought that it was sort of like, it would be like if they decided football games on field goals, but it's not. It's like really amazing. Every time there's a big one of these big like international soccer tournaments, I watch and I get really into it. I'm like, this is the year that I'm going to become a soccer fan. And then of course I never do. Also, just speaking of just global sports, in tennis, if you didn't see, Novak Djokovic won Wimbledon. That puts him, giving him his 20th Grand Slam victory. He now ties the record held by Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. He will go for 21 at the U.S. Open next month here in Queens. If he wins, he will become also the first men's tennis player to complete a calendar Grand Slam. Since Rod Laver did that, he won all 4 major tournaments back in 1969. So just some incredible tennis. And by the way, Ash Barty, if you didn't see, won Wimbledon on the women's side.
Yeah, that whole tournament was absolutely amazing. And it was you had the McGregor fight this weekend. You also had the NBA Finals this weekend. So there was finally like a weekend stacked of really cool stuff to watch when it came to sports. I do also want to talk about the box office because people who were not drawn to the sports games this weekend obviously went to the theaters. Marvel's Black Widow made $80 million in North America, Carlo, in its opening weekend. That was about what was expected, easily a new record also in the COVID era. What's noteworthy here, and this is really significant because we typically don't get any breakouts from the streamers, from Netflix, from Disney Plus about how particular things do. Disney Plus actually revealed that that Black Widow brought in $60 million on Disney Plus, where it was available for people to spend $30 for subscribers. Disney's never revealed that sort of data before. When they put this, like Mulan or all these other ones on the $30 availability on Disney Plus, they never tell us how it typically does. So either this did incredibly well that Disney wants to brag about Disney Plus, or Disney's trying to basically say, we were hoping Black Widow would have done better at the movie theaters, so we're just going to add this other little nugget about how it did on Disney Plus to make it look bigger and more grand.
See, I took it as what you said at first, which is them saying, like, look, this is proof in the pudding that this dual strategy works, that people will go to the theaters and they will also stream it online, and those two things will not cannibalize each other.
Right.
And that appears to have worked here, which is a big deal. It shows you that this flexible release strategy can work, at least for some of these big blockbusters. But that's a winning recipe for studios, right? If they can do this day and date thing, and people will still be able to choose which option they want. However, we saw that it didn't work within the Heights, right? So it may be possible that some of these movies are more prone to this kind of thing and some aren't.
Well, no, and I think larger question, now does that change? Because essentially everybody's sort of been testing their strategy throughout COVID. For instance, Warner Media putting things in theaters, but also for free on HBO Max. So now does Warner Media now charge for those films on HBO Max? Because that would be $60 million in revenue that they would have lost as a result. We saw Peacock do this for the very first time last weekend with Boss Baby. Everybody's sort of trying to figure out what's the best strategy here. But this does show us, Carlo, there is essentially this middle ground where people want to go back to theaters, but people also will pay a premium to still watch it at home. So that does kind of show us both sides of where the thing is right now. I do want to go to Cannes, because Cannes Film Festival was wild over the last week. Some interesting deals in some films that happened last week, but also a jewel heist, which you know I'm into this. This story, by the way, could have been totally out of one of the movies that they sold over the weekend, Carlo. Yeah. Actress Jodie Turner-Smith was the victim here. Burglars made off with tens of thousands of euros worth of jewelry from her hotel room while she was at the film festival. Now, police are saying that there were no signs of forced entry here, but authorities think the burglars were after some of the expensive Gucci jewels that she was wearing on the red carpet at the film festival. And by the way, this is not the first time jewel thieves have targeted Cannes, and this is also not the first time jewelry thieves have targeted a celebrity in France. You have to remember, just a few years ago, police arrested 17 people in connection with that jewelry heist of Kim Kardashian's hotel room in Paris, where they walked off with $10 million worth of jewels.
I forgot about that. But yeah, in terms of Cannes, in 2013, a lone thief managed to steal $136 million worth of Chopard jewelry from the Carlton Hotel on the Côte d'Azur. D'Azur? How do you say that? Côte d'Azur?
I think you're right. Côte d'Azur, yes.
Côte d'Azur, which, by the way, that hotel was the set of Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief.
Yes,
which,
it was. Yes, it was.
Sort of funny. That, by the way, one of the biggest heists in history and remains unsolved to this day.
Wow,
but yeah, there have been
didn't know that.
Yeah, there have been several of these heists. I didn't even think about the Kardashian heist. What is it about French jewel thieves? I guess
know.
They just. I guess Cannes is like a pretty attractive target, right? Because you got all these rich people walking around.
Right. And it's in a nice area of France as well. You're so right. And it's interesting because you never typically hear about jewel heists here in the United States. I mean, most of our heists happen in like an Ocean's 11 movie at like a casino. Yeah. So they're typically not with this. But I mean, think about that. 17 people with Kim Kardashian's jewel heists were arrested. Like, that is a really big group of people that all planned together to like figure out to steal jewels from her. And I believe I remember years ago, the average age was like between 20 and 72 years old. So it was almost like an Ocean's 11 like crew that got together just to get all these jewels.
Oh my Lord. Okay, well, we should leave it there. We're going long. Baker, first of all, 2 Boss Baby references in the pod today. That's a win as far as
yes, I agree.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, that's what you need to know for Monday, July 12th. Jill's back tomorrow, and we shall see you then. Thanks as always, Baker.